Welcome to Crafting Made Simple. We know you're always looking for those smart crafting shortcuts, right? Quick, high-value tips so you can jump straight into the fun part, especially, with the holidays coming up so fast. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something I actually really love, DIY clay ornaments. I've been making them since I was a kid, but this is more than just nostalgia. It's such a brilliant way to make simple, affordable things that look, well, really special. Personalized decor, gifts.
Absolutely. And that's our mission for this deep dive. We've gone through the source material, pulled out the 10 best creative clay ornament ideas, and kind of grouped them together. We're not just listing them, though.
No.
We're looking at the techniques behind them, what makes them work for beginners, but also, satisfying if you've been crafting for a while. We'll look at different clays, too, like air dry versus polymer and when to use which.
Okay, but before we get our hands dusty, if you like what you hear today and want more great ideas, we have a newsletter just for that. Please do take a second to sign up for the Crafting Made Simple newsletter. The link's right there in the description for you. It's https://birdsense.pageforms981BOZLREFC.
Yeah, definitely check that out. And just a quick note, if you're wondering about specific supplies for anything we talk about, all those details are in the podcast notes. Or you can find them over on the blog, which is paperflowdesigns.com.
Perfect. Okay, let's unpack this then. So the sources seem to highlight about 3 big trends for DIY clay ornaments this season. We'll start with the first one, which feels very organic and subtle. Bringing nature indoors.
And what's really fascinating here is how you can use nature to get these complex, beautiful designs without needing amazing sculpting skills.
Right.
So this first group ideas 1, 2, and 3, it's all about texture. And for that, we're mostly talking about air dry clay. It's just so easy to work with, isn't it? Yeah. Really moldable, stays soft for a while.
Yeah. Okay, so idea 1, pressed flower clay ornaments. These look lovely. You mean using actual fresh flowers like pansies, roses, maybe poinsettias?
Exactly, yeah. Press right into the clay. And the source mentions 2 main ways. You can press lightly, just to get that delicate sort of imprint.
Like a little fossil almost?
Kind of, yeah. Or you can actually embed the flower flat onto the clay surface.
Oh, okay.
But if you embed it, the absolute key thing, the real insight here, is sealing it properly.
Right. Otherwise, it won't last.
Exactly. The difference between a beautiful keepsake and, something falling apart in 6 months is the sealant. The sources specifically say Mod Podge.
Mod Podge, okay.
Yeah.
Why that specifically?
Well, it's apparently much better than a lot of varnishes because it doesn't yellow so much over time. And it gives some UV protection, which helps stop the petals decomposing or the color bleeding out. It really turns it into something long-lasting.
That's a really good detail. Not just use it, but why.
Yeah.
Okay, moving to something a bit more rustic. Idea number 2 is the cedar branch imprint ornament. This gives that real woodland Christmas vibe.
Yeah, and here we're really looking at the texture itself. When you press a cedar branch in, you get this quite high relief pattern, right? The little needles leave sharp edges and deeper grooves. And that deep texture is great because later you can maybe add a wash of dark paint or a brush on some metallic paint, and it just catches in those details and makes the design really pop, even if the clay itself is plain white.
And you can do something similar, but maybe with bigger shapes, using idea number 3, the leaf pattern clay ornament. The sources mentioned poinsettia leaves for this.
Yeah, poinsettia leaves work well because they're fairly large, but also quite sturdy. They leave a really clear, crisp imprint without you having to worry too much about tearing the clay. And this method is super versatile. It's a great Christmas pottery gift idea, apparently. And the source even mentions if you don't have air dry clay, this works just as well with salt dough, salt dough tree ornaments, because both doughs can take that firm pressure you need for a good imprint.
So the theme here is really letting nature do the design work for you, whether it's petals, cedar branches, or leaves.
Exactly. It saves time, looks intricate, and you don't need any drawing skills. It's sort of a shortcut to looking sophisticated,
Okay, so moving on from letting nature create the pattern, let's talk about the second big trend the sources identified: form and function. This is more about intentional shapes, cutouts, and durability. We're grouping ideas 4, 5, and 9 here.
Right. And when you start talking about deliberate designs like clean lines, letters, specific shapes, the choice of clay becomes really important. If you want something to last year after year, maybe as a special gift, you probably want to switch to polymer clay.
Okay, so let's take idea 4. Custom letter ornaments. These seem super easy, right? Just use cookie cutters or maybe hand shape some initials.
Dead simple. But the functional part the sources highlight is using them as clay Christmas tags. or DIY Xmas tags for presents.
Oh, I love that idea.
And that's where the durability really matters. If you want these tags to survive being tied onto gifts, maybe packed away, used again next year, polymer clay is just much more reliable. It bakes hard, and it's way less likely to crack or crumble compared to air-dry clay, which can sometimes be a bit sensitive to moisture over time.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And that strength is probably key for idea 5 too, the angel-shaped ornament.
Yeah.
If you use polymer clay for Christmas tree decorations like these, they'll definitely last.
For sure. And the detail holds up incredibly well. Polymer clay is great because it doesn't really shrink or warp much when you bake it, unlike some air-dry clays.
Right.
So you can use really detailed angel cookie cutters, and you can add tiny painted details or stick on little beads before you bake it, and you know the final shape will stay nice and crisp.
Okay, and that brings us nicely to the kind of foundation for a lot of these idea number 9. Custom cookie cutter ornaments. The versatile classic, right? Stars, snowflakes, circles.
It is the foundation, yeah. But the useful tip here is about the process. When you use cookie cutters, the sources stress making sure your clay is rolled out evenly. About a 1/4 inch thick seems to be the sweet spot.
Why that thickness?
Well, if it's too thin, it can warp easily when drying or baking. Too thick, and it takes ages to dry properly, or it might even crack in the oven with polymer clay. So consistency is key for a professional look. Oh, and always make the hanging hole before it dries or bakes, obviously.
Uh-huh. Yeah, learn that the hard way.
We've all been there. But make the hole a little bigger than you think you need, just in case the clay shrinks a tiny bit.
Good point. It's interesting how these 3 ideas, using cutouts, really shift the ornament from just being pretty to being functional, too. Like those high-quality gift tags.
Totally. A handmade tag just elevates the whole gift, doesn't it? And if you use polymer clay and cookie cutters, you can actually batch produce them pretty efficiently.
Okay, so we've covered natural textures and we've covered shapes and durability. Let's pivot to the final trend, the art of the finish. Because often the difference between something looking, well, homemade and something looking high-end is all about those finishing touches, secondary materials, paint.
This is where you can really elevate the style, often without needing complex techniques. It's more about aesthetic choices, contrasts. Take idea 6, the rustic farmhouse ornament with wooden beads. The clay shape itself might be simple, a circle or a heart, but that farmhouse style comes from the contrast of materials. After the clay shape is dry or baked, you pair it with, say, natural wooden beads strung on jute twine or maybe some rustic wire.
Oh, okay.
You've got the smooth, maybe matte finish of the clay against the rougher texture of the wood grain and the fibrous twine. That juxtaposition of textures instantly gives it that specific look. It's designed through simple material pairing.
That makes sense. Then, going to the completely opposite end of the style spectrum, we've got glamour with idea 7, metallic painted clay ornaments.
Yes, and getting that really luxed, believable metallic sheen takes a bit of technique. If you're painting polymer clay ornaments, you've got options. For a solid, heavy metallic look like gold or silver, you really need good quality acrylic metallic paints. Apply them smoothly, maybe with a soft brush or even a sponge to avoid streaks.
Right.
Or for just a subtle hint of metal, you can use a dry brushing technique. You get hardly any paint on a stiff brush, wipe most of it off, and then just lightly skim it over the surface texture.
So the secret to subtle shine isn't less paint overall, but how you apply it.
Exactly. And here's a key warning from the sources. Be careful putting thick, glossy sealants over really shiny metallic paints, especially things like gold leaf effects. Sometimes the gloss can actually dull the metallic reflection you were going for.
Oh, that's a trap. Good to know.
Yeah, you might want a very thin protective coat, or maybe none at all, depending on the paint.
Okay. Now, for something maybe more understated and elegant, idea 8 is the pressed rose petal ornament.
This brings us back to nature again, but with more of an elegant feel. The source suggested a star shape for the clay base. The pressed petals just add that little touch of color and delicate texture. These kinds of handmade ornaments with that soft floral touch, they feel really personal and refined, don't they?
They do.
It just shows that not everything needs to be bright and bold. Sometimes that quiet, simple beauty is really effective.
And finally, idea number 10 gives us that last little bit of sparkle, adding gold accents. This feels like the final polish you can add to almost any design.
Yeah, think of it like highlighting. You use a bit of gold acrylic paint or maybe a metallic marker just to catch the light on the raised parts of your design.
Okay.
So if you did that cedar branch imprint we talked about, you'd just brush a tiny bit of gold on the very tips of the needles. Or the source mentioned a fun melted snowman design. The gold would just highlight the edges, giving it definition and that festive shimmer. Then just finish with a simple ribbon or twine.
Wow, that's a fantastic range of techniques. We've gone from functional gift tags, handmade for Christmas, all the way to these really delicate, nature-inspired pieces. It feels like the options are pretty endless.
They really are. And I think the big takeaway here is just permission to experiment. If you're nervous about materials, start simple. Salt dough cookie ornaments are super forgiving, like we said, but the real skill comes from understanding when to use which clay air dry for easy molding, polymer for things you want to last forever. The source we looked at also has other easy air dry clay projects perfect for beginners so you can keep practicing even after the holidays.
Definitely. Okay, so here's a little thought for you to chew on this week. We've seen how effective things like flowers and cedar branches are for creating texture. Now that you have these ideas, what surprising material from your own home, something maybe unexpected, not typical craft stuff, could you press into clay this year to make a really unique, meaningful imprint? Maybe some old lace, a button from a favorite coat, an interesting key.
Ooh, that's a great challenge. Using clay to capture textures that mean something specific to you. And hey, if you want more inspiration like this, more deep dives into crafting, don't forget to sign up for the Crafting Made Simple newsletter.
Yes, that newsletter is packed with tips to help you take your DIY skills further. The link is right there in the description. https://birdsend.pageforms981bozilresta. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into holiday crafting.
Yeah, happy crafting.
We'll catch you next time.